I thought we were a normal family. From the outside, that's exactly how we looked. We had a steady home, a routine that gave us comfort, and the kind of family habits people admired. Sunday dinners, where everyone gathered around the table. Vacations every summer to the same quiet lake house where we knew every inch of the shoreline. Smiles for neighbors. Polite nods at church. My father, Lionel, was steady. He worked long hours as an accountant, the sort of man who believed showing up every day was proof of love. My mother, Clarice, was the social one. She had warmth that drew people in, and a grace that made her the center of any room. And me, I was the oldest child, the one who thought stability meant safety, who thought routines were enough to keep everything unshaken. Looking back now, I see it differently. What I once called peace was just silence. What I mistook for stability was only habit. I believed that because my family followed the same patterns year after year, we were untouchable, immune to the storms I'd seen destroy other families. But I was wrong. The truth is, routine can hide 1,000 cracks. Smiles at the dinner table can disguise distance. And love, when left unspoken, can wither so quietly no one notices until it's already gone. At the time, I didn't see it. I told myself we were fine, that our life was steady, unchanging, safe. I clung to that belief with everything in me because the alternative was too frightening to face. I carried that illusion right up until the night it broke. One ordinary evening, in the middle of an ordinary week. I came home expecting nothing more than the sound of my father's television humming and the smell of my mother's cooking. Instead, I opened the door to a truth so heavy it cracked the foundation of everything I believed about family, love, and loyalty. That was the night I walked in on a secret that exposed everything. Have you ever thought your family was unshakable until one moment shattered it all? If so, tell me in the comments, because this story is for you. It started so quietly, I almost convinced myself nothing was wrong. My mother had always been busy, always running errands. But lately, those errands stretched longer. She'd leave in the afternoon and return late in the evening with flimsy explanations. Traffic, long lines, unexpected stops. At first, I accepted it. Why wouldn't I? She was my mother. Trust was natural, unquestioned. But the more often it happened, the harder it was to ignore. Sometimes, she came home with shopping bags that didn't quite match her excuses. Other times, with no bags at all. Just a smile that lingered too long on her lips. A glow that had nothing to do with groceries or errands. Her phone became another sign. It buzzed at odd hours, lighting up beside her at the dinner table or in the middle of the night. If my father reached for it absent-mindedly, she pulled it closer. And when she answered, her laughter was different. Lighter. Secretive. Almost like she was speaking to someone who made her feel alive again. My father noticed. Of course he did. How could he not? But he didn't ask questions. He buried himself in his spreadsheets, in late nights at the office, in television that played louder than it needed to. His silence was a shield. Maybe he thought if he didn't ask, he wouldn't have to face the answer. The change crept into our meals too. What used to be full of chatter grew quieter. My father ate quickly, eyes on his plate. My mother kept her phone face down, but every vibration made her fingers twitch. The tension was thick, but no one dared to name it. It was my younger sister, Nora, who finally gave voice to what we all sensed. One evening, as we cleared the table, she leaned close and whispered, "Why does Mom smile at her phone like that? She never smiles at Dad anymore." Her words pierced through me like a blade. I wanted to protect her innocence, to dismiss her question with a laugh. But the truth weighed too heavily. I managed only a shrug and muttered, "She's probably just talking to a friend." But deep down, I knew better. Nora's question replayed in my mind for days. Every smile, every late return, every distracted laugh fed a growing unease in me. I began noticing the details I'd ignored, the way she slipped out of the room to answer calls, the sudden bursts of joy in her voice, followed by guarded silence. I told myself not to overthink it, that families go through phases, that maybe she just needed space. I clung to any excuse that would make the gnawing in my chest go away. But excuses don't erase instincts. Something was happening, something none of us were willing to name. And though I didn't realize it then, the truth was already sitting in our house like an unwelcome guest. I didn't know it then, but betrayal had already moved into our home. It was a Saturday afternoon when the illusion of our normal family finally broke. I had gone out to study with friends, but the session ended early. Instead of lingering, I decided to head home. I remember walking up the driveway, humming absent-mindedly, expecting nothing unusual. The house looked the same as always, calm, steady, familiar. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew something was different. The living room wasn't empty. I heard voices, low, urgent. My mother's voice carried first. Her tone was sharp, almost pleading. "You shouldn't be here while the kids are around." I froze in the hallway. Confusion swept over me. Who was she talking to? Then came another voice. A man's voice. One I knew too well. Adrian, my father's younger brother. My uncle. The air seemed to vanish from my lungs. My pulse hammered so loudly in my ears. I thought they might hear it. Every instinct told me to back away, to leave before I saw what I couldn't unsee. But my legs betrayed me, pulling me forward into the living room. And there they were. My mother stood close to Adrian, her face pale with shock as she turned toward me. His body shifted like he'd been caught stealing, his head already lowering. Shame dripping from every line of him. The distance between them was small enough that I didn't need words to fill in the truth. Time slowed. The only sound in the room was the steady ticking of the wall clock. Each second pounded into me, carving the betrayal deeper. I opened my mouth, but my voice was unsteady. Foreign. How long? That was all I could manage. Just 2 words, carrying every ounce of confusion, anger, and heartbreak clawing at me. Neither of them answered. My mother's lips parted, trembling, but no words came. Adrian stared at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. Their silence screamed louder than any confession. I felt my chest tighten, like the room itself was closing in. The mother I trusted, the uncle I looked up to, both reduced to strangers in a single moment. And me, I was left standing in the wreckage, waiting for an answer that would never come. The silence stretched on, unbearable. My knees felt weak. My stomach churned. But I couldn't move. My world had split in two, and the truth was staring back at me from their guilty faces. I turned away, but the image of them together burned into me. Permanent. Impossible to erase. The sound of that clock. The stillness of the room. The crushing weight of their silence. Those details are etched into me forever. That was the moment I understood the life I thought I knew was gone. And it wasn't just gone. It had been taken by the very people I trusted most. What would you do if you walked in on a secret like this? Confront them immediately, or keep it hidden until you had proof? Let me know what you'd choose. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of my mother and Adrian clung to me like a shadow, replaying again and again until I thought I'd lose my mind. Finally, I went to her room. She was sitting on the edge of her bed, her hands trembling in her lap, as if she had been waiting for me. "Tell me it was a mistake," I said, my voice breaking. "Tell me I misunderstood." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she whispered, "I never wanted you to find out like this." I stared at her, barely able to breathe. "Then it's true." She nodded, covered her face with her hands. "It's been almost a year." The words hit harder than the scene I had walked in on. Almost a year. All those evenings, all those phone calls, all those distracted smiles, they weren't random moments. They were proof of a life she was living outside of us. "Why?" I demanded. "Why him of all people?" She dropped her hands, looked at me with eyes so raw. I barely recognized her. "Because he makes me feel alive," she said. "He listens in ways your father doesn't anymore. With Adrian, I feel seen." Her words cut deeper than the act itself. To hear my own mother justify tearing her vows apart, not just as a wife, but as a mother, was unbearable. I left her room without another word, my chest burning with anger, with confusion. When my father found out, the silence in our home grew even heavier. He didn't scream. He didn't throw things. He didn't even confront her in front of us. He simply folded into himself. It was like watching a strong bridge collapse in slow motion. Something that had always felt sturdy suddenly reduced to rubble. One night, I walked into the kitchen for water and found him sitting at the table. The overhead light cast a soft glow on his face, and for the first time, I saw him cry. Not the loud, uncontrollable sobs of a broken man, but the quiet, exhausted tears of someone who had carried too much for too long. He gripped a glass of water in both hands, as if it was the only thing keeping him grounded. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to say something to ease his pain, but the words stuck in my throat, and in that moment, I realized there was nothing I could do to put the pieces back together. That was the night I stopped believing in fairy tale families. Secrets always slip through the cracks. You can lock them up, bury them deep, pretend they don't exist. But the truth has claws. It finds a way out. Always. In our family, it spread like fire, faster than any of us could prepare for. My father never told anyone directly. He didn't need to. His silence was enough. He stopped showing up at family gatherings, stopped answering calls, and soon people started to whisper. You don't need words to announce a fracture. People can smell it. When the truth finally reached my grandparents, it detonated. My grandfather, stoic, hard as stone, looked at my mother and said, "You are no longer welcome in my home." My grandmother wept, not the gentle tears of sympathy, but the kind that come from shame. She said she couldn't bear to look at her own daughter, knowing what she had done to her brother's marriage. They laid the shame at her feet, every ounce of it. And Adrian, he wasn't spared either. His parents, the same bloodline, turned on him. Betraying a brother was unforgivable. I overheard the phone call. My grandfather's voice thundered through the walls. "You are no longer my son." It should have felt like justice, but it didn't. It felt like watching my family tree splinter apart, branches snapping, falling, rotting, until all that was left was hollow space. At school, I carried the secret like a stone in my chest. No one knew why my eyes looked older than my age, why my laughter had disappeared, why I sat in silence when I used to fill the room with noise. I couldn't explain. How do you tell classmates my mother and my uncle tore my family apart? So I smiled. I turned to my homework. I played along. But inside, I was choking. Every conversation felt paper thin compared to the weight I dragged behind me. Sometimes I wondered, did anyone see it? Did my teachers notice how long I stared out the window? Did my friends wonder why I slipped away from gatherings without a word? Or was I truly invisible even in my pain? On the outside, every family looked normal. Parents cheering at games, siblings teasing each other in hallways, plans made, promises kept. On the inside, my world was nothing but shards. A broken mirror, reflecting pieces of a life that no longer existed. Have you ever carried a secret so heavy it felt like it was eating you alive? Share your story if you're comfortable. Someone out there might need to hear they're not alone. The day my father filed for divorce, the air in our home changed. Papers sat on the kitchen counter, neat, cold, final. They looked less like legal forms and more like a death sentence. There were no dramatic confrontations, no screaming matches, just quiet signatures, and the silent understanding that what had been built over decades was gone. The house was next. The home where birthdays had been celebrated, where Nora and I had marked our heights on the doorframe, where every corner carried the echo of laughter, arguments, lullabies. Sold. To strangers. Watching the moving truck pull away felt like watching my childhood erased, piece by piece. Then came the choice. Where we would live. Nora, younger, louder, braver, refused to stay with our mother. She packed her bags with fury only a child betrayed could hold. She clung to our father, determined to protect him the way she felt he had never been protected by our mother. I chose differently. I stayed with Clarice, not because I forgave her, but because some part of me, even in anger, still needed her. I longed for her comfort, for the familiarity of her presence. It wasn't forgiveness. It was weakness. It was love, twisted by betrayal, and it left me tangled in guilt. Guilt that made me feel disloyal to my father, to my sister, even to myself. The distance between Nora and me grew fast. Phone calls turned short. Visits felt strained. She looked at me as though I had chosen sides. And maybe I had. She carried our father's heartbreak like armor. I carried the weight of my own contradictions. Living with my mother was no easier. Every glance between us loaded. Every silence, a scream I couldn't escape. I hated what she had done. Yet I couldn't shut out the years she had loved me before it all unraveled. Each night, I lay awake wrestling with the same thought. How could one person be both, the source of my comfort and the root of my pain? The truth was, I was split in two. Half of me burned with anger, the other half desperate for the security I used to feel in her arms. And that question haunted me. How do you hate the very person who also gave you life? More than a decade has passed since that night in the living room. But the echoes never fully faded. I built my own life. New home, new routines. And yet, the past still sneaks in. A shadow slipping under the door. A reminder that betrayal doesn't vanish with time. It lingers. It shapes the way you see love, the way you see trust, the way you see yourself. Therapy became my lifeline. For years, I sat across from someone who gave me words for feelings I couldn't untangle alone. They helped me name the grief. Not just for my parents' marriage, but for the childhood I lost. I learned betrayal doesn't just break vows. It rewrites identities. It makes you question who you are when the foundation beneath you suddenly cracks. Adrian faded completely from my world. I haven't spoken to him since the day everything came out. Cutting ties was the only way to preserve peace. To me, he is a ghost, a name I refuse to speak. My mother is harder. She's still here, still alive, still reaching for a relationship that will never be the same. On holidays, I see her. Our conversations, polite, rehearsed. She tries to explain her choices, even now. I was unhappy, she says. I needed connection. Maybe there's truth in her words. But truth doesn't erase destruction. I understand longing. I understand loneliness. But I will never understand filling that emptiness by breaking the people who trusted you most. There is distance between us, a wall that will never fall. She is still my mother, but she is also the one who taught me just how fragile love can be. That contradiction, I carry it quietly, like a scar no one else sees. Looking back, I've learned betrayal isn't only the act itself. It's the silence that follows, the permanent cracks in your sense of safety. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means living with the scar and refusing to let it define every part of you. And yet, even now, there are nights I wonder, have I truly moved on? Or is some part of me still standing there, frozen in that living room, watching the moment my family collapsed? If this story resonates with you, subscribe to Deception Diaries, because these aren't just stories, they're realities so many of us live through. There are memories you carry forever, whether you want to or not. For me, it will always be that night in the living room. I can still see it as clearly as if it happened yesterday, the sound of the door closing behind me, the steady tick of the clock, and the way my mother and my uncle froze when our eyes met. They didn't need to speak. That single look between them told me everything. It was guilt. It was fear. It was betrayal. In that frozen moment, the family I thought I knew shattered. I stood there, motionless, a teenager who suddenly felt much older, realizing the ground beneath me had disappeared. That one look rewrote my childhood, my sense of love, my understanding of loyalty. Even now, years later, I sometimes close my eyes and see it all again. The silence, the lowered head, the truth crashing over me without a single word spoken. That image became the line in my life that separates before and after. And yet, as painful as it was, that moment also became the start of something else. It forced me to confront what betrayal does to a family. It taught me that healing isn't about pretending it never happened. It's about surviving the pain and refusing to let it define you. I thought we were a normal family, but my mother's secret affair exposed everything. And the truth, as painful as it was, became the beginning of my own healing. Subscribe to Deception Diaries for more real stories. And don't forget to like, share, and comment, because I want to hear your thoughts.